In this video, you're going to be building the Turo Web 3.0 dApp using NextJS. You're going to be able to list and rent out your NFTs using the ERC 4907 standard, which is a pretty new one. And we're going to be using Thirdweb to deploy this contract and then to interact with the blockchain. Later down the line, you will be able to verify and check these transactions and rentals using Etherscan. You will be able to list all these cars and rent out to random users who will be paying to rent these cars from you with Ethereum. So with that said, let's just jump straight into it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started building Turo. So what I have in front of me is basically just a regular Google Chrome, and what we're gonna do is go to thirdweb.com/cleverprogrammer, as you can see it right there. And by the way, this is linked down below in the description. You can, for your convenience, just go ahead, click that link, and then you're gonna be ready to go. Now, you are going to be greeted with the Thirdweb dashboard straight away, but we're not going to stay there for a little bit because we are going to click connect Metamask, which will prompt us to connect the Metamask account. You're going to have to accept all the privacy policy as usual, and then you're right back on your dashboard. Now, you can go ahead, hit that logo, and that will show up all your projects you've previously worked on. But that's basically it for this section. Congratulations on signing up for Thirdweb. Let's go ahead and crush it. Now, if you haven't done this already before, we're gonna go through now the process of installing Metamask on your Chrome. So what you need to do is go to metamask.io/download and then just hit that little install button right there. And that'll take you to the Chrome web store. You can literally just Google it. But basically you wanna go ahead, click add to Chrome, add extension, and then that'll go ahead and install this for you. And once it's there, it's gonna pop up a brand new page, which will walk you through the setup process. So hit that get started button, and then agree whatever there's to agree. Obviously, you should read it because that's why it's popped there. And then if you already have a wallet, you probably know how to import it. And then you can just skip this section. But for those who are brand new to Web3, go ahead, click create wallet. And you will need to pop in a password now. Remember this password because this is going to be the password that you're going to be unlocking your MetaMask with all the time. Read the terms of use and then go ahead, click create. Then there's a little bit of an education if you want to watch it on how you can secure your wallet. Now, and this is the crazy part. This is your 12 phrase security secret, whatever. Do not share this with anybody. If anybody gets it, they will have full control over your wallet. However, you want to go ahead, copy all of that, and then click next, and you will have to paste it here. Now, once you're done with that, that's just to confirm you have it. Now, you want to go ahead and save this because without this, if you lose access to your MetaMask, you're never going to regain it ever again. So once done, hit confirm, and then you're basically all done. Now, one more thing we want to do is, because we only see the Ethereum mainnet, which would obviously be a little too expensive just to do tutorials on, hit that show hide test networks button. Scroll down where it says show test networks on the top right there, and turn that on because we are going to be using test networks. And you also want to you might as well just turn on show conversion on test networks. That'll basically fetch the current Ethereum / US dollar FX rate, and then it will show you in dollars how much you're spending on each transaction. But basically, that is how you set up MetaMask. All right, now time to actually get started coding. So let's use our custom built Clever Programmer CLI tool that will just help you with setting up the project. Pop in your email and then pop in your name. And then as of the recording of this video, the CLI wasn't capable of doing it yet. But right now, if you just start typing in Turo, that will show up and narrow down the list. So you don't have to look for it. And then we're just going to fast forward to the moment where it is done. And it will say opening VS Code, and it will open up your VS Code. So there's your project. That's pretty much all we need to know now. And just pop in Yarn Dev into your terminal and open it up in your Chrome. Once you open it in your Chrome, this is what you will see. And this is your barebone project. You have everything set up for you, literally. So all we got to do now is just build the app. So time to open up and get started working in Remix IDE. Now, if you go to remix.ethereum.org, you will see this exact website in front of you. This is basically an IDE specifically created for Ethereum and Solidity developers. So this is what we're going to be using. And in a couple of other videos, you might have seen me working in the Remix IDE extension. It's the exact same stuff. The only difference is that one is inside my VS Code and this one is in the browser. So this is like more portable or mobile. Now what you want to do here is just go into our contracts and then hit create new file and name it IERC4907.sol. That is IERC4907.sol. And if you follow this standard, basically you will have a contract that allows users to rent NFTs. And that's basically what we're going to be doing here. So go ahead, name that file like that. And then you don't have to worry about any of the artifacts or anything like that. Just leave it as is. Now, we have it linked down below, but this is the official IERC and the ERC4907 contracts. So you want to select the IERC one right now, and then just copy the entire thing and paste it inside there. The good thing about standards is they are like open source. You can use it, you can do stuff with it, and you don't have to type it up. This is perfect, even if you don't even know what Solidity is. So you can just type it, you can just paste it there, and you can look through like what it does. Now, at the time of filming this video, the latest version of Solidity that was out was 0.8.13. So we will be using that for this build. All right, so with all that being done, let's go ahead and add one more file. And so that is going to be the Turo.sol. Now, this file is going to compile everything and grab everything from all the other like sources and whatnot. And we'll be using this, and we'll be interacting mainly with this one alongside the other one. This is going to be like the umbrella contract. Getting started, let's just drop in an MIT SPDX license identifier and we're going to be using obviously the exact same Solidity version. So you're going to make sure it matches. Now, that's what I was talking about. We are going to go ahead and import the ERC4907.sol file, which we literally just finished up. And we're going to go ahead and import a few things from OpenZeppelin. First of all, we're going to be importing /contract, the counter contract. So at OpenZeppelin /contract /utils/counter.sol. And so once you're done with that, you want to go ahead and initiate your Turo contract, which will be inheriting a bunch of things from ERC4907 and the ownable contract that we just imported. Now, you also want to go ahead and initialize your counter. So we're going to be using that. And so this is how you initialize it and set it up for future use. Now, if you try to import it right now, also make sure that your compiler on the top left matches your Pragma or like your Solidity version. So 0813 once again. So once you hit compile, it will show this error, and that's because we do not have OpenZeppelin installed. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so to make that error go away, we actually have to create a constructor, and that's because the counters contract requires that. So you want to create a constructor that takes in a name, that takes in a symbol, and both of them obviously strings, and then it will create an ERC4907 instance. And so if you compile that, as you can see on the check mark on the left hand side, it is now perfect. And if you hit deploy, there is your contract. It is deployed. And now if you like click around and call all the functions, you'll basically see all the functionality that your contract has. And so with that being said, now it's time we actually create our state variables and move on with the build. All right, so it is time we go ahead and set up all the variables that we're going to be using in this contract. So using those after we initiated and imported the counters, we're going to go ahead and create two private variables. One of them is going to be current token ID, and the other one is going to be total supply.
Now, once that's done, we're going to create a public string, which we'll call base token URI, and then a uint that will be a bit that we'll call base amount. Now, this basically will just store an amount in way, and we're going to go ahead and convert it now. So go over to eth-converter.com, or you can just copy whatever we have there. So basically what we want to do is we want to set a base price of 0.001 ether, which will equal to, I'm not going to read out a number, but that's your number, copy it, and then that's what we're going to put that there. And if you were wondering like, hey, it's Ethereum, why can't I just put Ethereum in there? It's because Way is it's kind of like the cents for the dollar, but it's Way for Ether, and a whole another scale. And also Solidity only understands Way. So there it is. We need to provide everything in Way. So once we got that, we're going to go ahead and create an array of strings, which will be the rentable NFTs, URIs. Basically, we're just going to store all the URIs of each NFT that any person who uses the app can rent. And then we're also going to create a struct, which will be a rentable item struct. Basically, this is where we're going to define all the properties of a rentable item, of an item that the user can rent. So initially, like obviously you need the bool, which will return a true or false, whether the item is rentable or not. You want to put in a price, which we'll call amount per minute. That'll obviously be a uint, and that's basically the item. Now, we'll create two mappings. We'll map each ID to a rentable item, and we're going to call it rentables. And then the other one is going to do the same with the IDs, but instead it's going to map to addresses. On a higher level, what's happening here? You want to track all the items you have, and you want to track all the people that rent each item. And so the only way to do it is you want to map both of those to specific IDs. That way you can easily find both of them. So that's basically it for now. Time to calculate the amount per minute. All right, so let's go ahead by setting up a function, get amount per minute, and we'll need to pass in the token ID. So it's going to be a uint, and this will just return a couple of things. So it's going to be a public function, and it will return a uint, so basically a number. And so you want to specify what it will return, and that will be the amount per minute for the item, which has the token ID you just passed in. All right, now let's go ahead and build the mint function. So these are going to be NFTs that we're going to be renting. So before you can rent anything, you want to be able to mint them, right? Because without that, it's pretty hard to rent, right? All right, so we're just going to call it mint, just like that. We'll need to pass in one prop that will be token URI, and only the owner of this contract will be able to mint NFTs. That's a safety measure that we're taking this time. And so you want to increment both of your counters, so your total supply and the current token ID as well. Now, the counter contract that we imported earlier comes in handy because you can just call an increment on it, and it's like super easy. And so you want to create a local variable, which will be new item ID, and that just takes the current token URI, if that makes sense. And so now you want to call the SafeMint function, which is, by the way, coming from the ERC4907 contract. And so you will need to pass in owner, and you will need to pass in new item ID. Now, once that's done, you also want to set the token URI, which we are actually passing in to this function. Using another function from ERC4907, we'll pass in the token ID and we'll pass in the token URI. So what this does is previously we just created the new NFT. Now we actually set the token URI to the NFT so that it shows up later on whenever we're looking for it. And we're going to be using that on the front end. So you want to make sure that you pass in the correct ID. Now, as I said before, on line 15, we're also going to store this token URI in that array we set up earlier. And we also have to store this whole entire NFT in the rentables mapping. So what we're going to do is rentables, new item ID, the
element, and then we're just going to pass in a struct, which we already set up. So we're going to have rentable, which obviously initially it's going to be true, and the amount per minute is going to be the base amount. So both of these are already set up and already ready to go. Now, if you deploy it, now you check out the test panel, you can see that there is your mint function, and you can pass in your token URI, and that'll basically invoke this function. All right, now let's build a function that returns all the NFT URLs that we have deployed. So we can just call it get rentable NFTs URIs or something. It will be a public function that will return an array of strings. And all it will do is just return rentable NFT URIs. So that's pretty much all we're gonna do. So if you wanna test it out, you can just redeploy your contract again. And you wanna go in, and there's your, by the way, there's your functions. Right now, it's an empty array. You can just paste one of your uploaded IPFS links, hit mint, so that'll be done. And now if you are gonna call the get rentable NFTs URIs again, there is your link. So if you see that and it's returning the exact same link, you did a good job. So with that said, let's move on to actually building the rent function. All right, so the biggest thing that we're gonna be working on is the rent function. So let's go ahead and get started building that. So that will need a token ID as an input, and it will also need the amount or the expiration time. So that's gonna be a number that we pass in as minutes. Later on, when we get to the front end part, we're gonna get there. So this is gonna be a public payable virtual function. And so right off the bat, let's go ahead and calculate the due amount. So we'll have to figure it out from the rentables, using the rentables map, using the token ID and grabbing their amount per minute. So if we multiply that by the expires number that we just passed in, so basically the minutes, you multiply it with the amount per minute, you get the due amount. And so at that point, might as well check for whether the correct amount was sent or not. And if not, just show them that, hey, this is an incorrect amount, so we can move forward. And then you also want to make sure that the current user of that specific NFT is empty, and because otherwise it literally means that the item is already rented. So we're gonna display a corresponding error message. And you also want to make sure that the specific item is rentable, and if not, obviously say that the renting is disabled for this specific NFT. All right. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and transfer real quick. Once all the checks passed, we're gonna go ahead and transfer all the due amount to that person. And so you wanna now go ahead and transfer the due amount to the owner of that specific NFT. And now we're gonna import use something from the ERC 4907 contract. And so that'll be the user info. So we're just gonna create a local variable info, and we're gonna get the specific user. And so we wanna make sure that we set the information of that user. So it's gonna be the message sender, it's gonna be the user, and then you also wanna set the expiry, which is going to be the block timestamp plus whatever the person passed in as number of minutes times 60. So it's gonna be the expiry. And then you also want to document whoever the rentee was. Now, we haven't created this function, so let's go ahead and do that now. So add rentee, and it will take in the token ID, and it will take in the rentee. So it will basically take in an address, and it will take in a number as their inputs. And so with the mapping that we already set up, we're just gonna go ahead and save that. And now that it's passed in, we're good to go. And so you can remove the previous deployment and actually deploy the new contract. Now, whatever URI you have on your clipboard, just paste it there, and then you're basically good to go. And then you can basically double check that, hey, there is the owner. You can double check everything that things are stored correctly. So whether is it rentable or not, who's the owner, get the type, and then get how much it would cost. And so whether it is rentable or not. And so let's just select another wallet, and let's try to rent it, see what happens. So we put in the token ID, put in the expiry for 3, and it says incorrect amount. So what you need to do is pass in an amount, all right? Because otherwise it's going to be pretty hard to move from there. For now, because it's just like a dummy network, you can just pass in 2 Ether. That'll be like for sure more than enough. And there you go. It has successfully rented out the NFT. And now you will see, if you check on it, the user is safe there. Again, if you double check, that is the same address that you used to send that 2 Ether in. So that is basically it for the rent function. Now let's go ahead and move on. Now, if you're more experienced with Solidity, this is going to be an optional challenge for you. You can go ahead and try to implement the fee change basically. So a function that will modify the amount per minute. So this is your call to action. Go ahead, pause it right now if you are up for the challenge. If not, that's completely fine too. And with that said, let's keep going. So that'll be a new function. We'll call it set rent fee. And so you're going to pass in the token ID and you want to pass in the new amount. And so this is going to be a public function and will require a couple of things that are going to like guard this. So you want to make sure that the user is actually approved and they are the actual owner of that NFT. So obviously I shouldn't be able to change your NFT's price, right? But that doesn't sound really good. So you want to check for that, and if that requirement is not satisfied, just send back a nice little error message and we're good to go. Now, using the token ID, go into your mapping and you can go ahead and update the amount per minute, and that is basically it. That is your function. So if you figured it out, good job. If not, that's completely fine too. So with that being said, let's go ahead and finally use Thirdweb to deploy this contract. All right, so go back now to your VS Code and also go back to your Thirdweb. And once you logged in and connected your Metamask, there is that little Thirdweb deploy button. That'll basically take you to a page that goes through in detail what is happening when you're deploying using Thirdweb. So I suggest you go ahead and read that, because it's a pretty neat tool. But for now, we're just going to be using the first snippet, which is npx thirdweb deploy. So just copy that. What we'll need to do now is create a new folder on the root called contracts. And then inside there, like go there with your terminal and just create a new truffle project using truffle init. That'll be pretty fast. And then inside of your contracts folder in there, you want to create a Turo.sol file and copy over all the code from your Turo SOL on your Remix IDE. You want to also copy the other 2 contracts, so ERC4907 and ERC497, both of them. Get them into your VS Code, because we have nothing to do on Remix IDE anymore during this tutorial. So just get all your code, and once that is done, if you have that error, like, you can just completely ignore it. There's no reason for it to be there. But what you want to do now is the time to paste in that Thirdweb deploy command that you copied earlier. So just type that in there, put that in, and you're good to go. Now, this will take a little bit of a while, and it will come up with this nice little interface. You want to select Turo, because that's the one we're going to deploy now. So that'll take a little bit of a time, and once it is uploaded, it will auto open the site for you, where you can configure the name and you can give it a symbol. So we're just going to say Turo rentable NFT market and Turo for symbol, and then you can just hit deploy. That'll take a little time, so just confirm it, and it'll be actually 2 separate transactions. So just confirm them both, and then you are good to go. Now, once this is done, it will take a few extra seconds to load everything up, but this is your contract on Thirdweb. So they provide you with a lot of things. You can explore all of your functions here. You have every single function that you had on Remix IDE, and you can test them out, all of them. You literally have a full-on playground with your own functions, and they also provide you with code snippets on how you could invoke every single function that you have. So you also will have a full log of every single interaction that has happened with that contract. So right now you can see that it was just deployed, and then there are all the NFTs that are minted. And then once again, here's all
the code that we're going to be using. This is a pretty cool tool. Use this for any kind of future project that you're building. And once again, play around with it, figure out what's where. Pause this video, like actually do go ahead and pause this, because that's going to be more beneficial for you. Pause it, play with it, figure out what's where, and then we can go ahead and continue from there. And once you're done messing around and you know the place, we're going to go ahead and connect our wallets to the app. All right, now this one is going to be so easy that it like literally makes me mad. So what you want to do is import like one thing. We're going to import Thirdweb provider and chain ID from Thirdweb dev/React. And then you're going to wrap it all around the application. So you will have a Thirdweb provider with a desired chain ID. And you can just like put in whatever, like chain ID that girly, that is perfect. And then just close that and put everything in between. All right, that was step one. And now you want to go into your header where the connect wallet thing is. You're going to import connect wallet from the same package. And then down there on line 22, or probably it's like somewhere around there, you're just going to just render it out. And that's it. You got your wallet connection. You're good to go. So now you see why I said it's so easy, it makes me mad. So there's your Switch wallet, everything. Yeah, it's not as fancy as all the other ones, but the ease of setting it up is crazy. Let's implement the mint function. All right, now let's go ahead and mint those NFTs. First of all, that's the model that we're going to be using. And so go into your mintform.js file. And we're going to import a couple things. So first of all, we're going to need ethers. And then we're going to need use contract and use contract call from Thirdweb dev. And so on the right hand side, now you want to go ahead and select the mint function. And so we're going to copy a couple of things from there. So that mutate async mint is loading, copy that thing, and then just paste it right there. And that'll set up a few things that will help us call the actual mint function inside the contract. Yeah, there's that. And we'll have to pass in is mint loading to that is loading state. So that'll take care of the whole thing and wait for the loading time. Now, next thing we'll need to do is scroll down a little bit, and wherever you see show modal and hide modal, we're going to add a few things there. So now in the use modal hook, you want to create a new onSubmit event, and we're going to catch all the values and even the reset form function. So all of that is going to happen whenever the person submits that form. So that is something that Formik and Yup gives you access to. And so now whenever minting is not loading, when there's nothing loading, you're going to fire off a try catch. And I've said this many and many times, and I'll say it over and over again. When you're working with the blockchain, you want to have try catches all over the place because we're early. And so console log the error out, or you can use console.error, whichever you want to. But now we're going to call the mint function and pass in the mint URI. So you want to use values.mint URI, and values is something that Formik is taking care of for you. So this is just a form library. Don't worry about it. Just use values.mint URI. We set everything up for you. Feel free to fiddle around with the code, by the way. And so now we're going to use toast promise to have a little nice message on the top. And we're going to have a pending, we're going to have a success, and we're going to have an error message. So all of those are going to be chosen based on what happens with the promise. Because once again, that data thing, that is actually a promise. So we're going to have to wait for it and get it resolved. And once all of that is done, we want to reset the form because there's no reason for us to keep the data. So there's that. All right. So there are all the things that basically Formik is taking. And so whenever there is some sort of change in the field or in the input field, we are calling on the Formik.handle change function. And the value is coming from Formik.values.mint URI. So that's that input field on the right hand side. Now,
you want to go ahead and grab one of those links that we gave you, and you can either have your own Pinata upload, or you can go ahead and just copy it from one of the files that we put in the assets folder. So we actually provided with all of them for your convenience. And so now go ahead and just paste it there and mint one of those NFTs. So as you can see, nothing has happened, literally nothing. So there's clearly something that we need to do. No MetaMask pop-up, nothing, literally nothing. So what we're gonna do is in the form on submit, you wanna call the handle submit function, and on reset, you wanna call the formic.handle reset function. And so if you're not calling those functions, nothing is gonna happen. So let's try it again, paste that link right there, and there you go, there's your MetaMask pop-up. Now go ahead, hit confirm, and that's basically it. Now you'll also want to wait for it to wait for the pending, because it's not going to reset the form itself until it's not done. So now there's your toast, but something is a little off. So like you still have to like refresh things. And so the solution for that is you're going to go back to line 41. And instead of waiting for that, like you don't await. If you await there, that means the toast promise is still, it's always going to be pending because it's never going to get resolved. However, if you remove that and then you use the toast message system to process your promise, you are going to be better off with that. So let's try this again. And there is your MetaMask popping up. And now the toast message is actually accurate. And there's your success message. So it was basically minted twice, but it's completely fine. Let's go ahead and fetch that NFT. All right, now let's go ahead and fetch all these NFTs. So to get started, we're gonna do a couple of different things. So on the reading data, we will need to import a few things. So we're gonna need use contract and use contract data from Thirdweb, but we can just copy it over from Thirdweb. And so in order to get the owner, like the owner of the car, we'll need to destructure a few things. So you want to destructure data as owner, and you want to destructure is loading as is owner loading. And so that's going to be calling the owner function of that contract that we deployed earlier. Now, in the NFTs use state, you can see that there's that BMW that we had earlier on, but let's just go ahead and remove it. There's no reason for that to be there anymore. It was just a cool static data, but we don't need it. So as you can see, no cards yet. It's showing up as it's supposed to. And so we're gonna create a couple of use states. So one of them is gonna be user of data, and the other one is going to be price. And so both of them are going to be initialized as empty arrays. And now I want to go over to Thirdweb and select get rentable NFT URIs. And we're gonna call that function too. So basically you're just selecting functions from the contract that you've already built to call. So right now we're gonna set that up as well. And so we're gonna destructure data as rentable NFT URIs and is loading as is loading rentable NFT URIs. So to call that function, we're gonna set up a few other things here. So let's create a brand new function down there, which is going to be upload NFTs. And so as a guard function, or as a guard clause, make sure that is loading rentable NFTs exists, or it doesn't exist, my bad. So there's nothing being loaded right now. And so create a new variable that's going to be calling all the NFT URIs one by one, but it's going to be stored as in one variable. So we're going to use axios.all for that. And if the autocomplete didn't import it for you, just check out my line 10, because that has already imported automatically. So you're going to say axios.all, and then we're going to need to map through all the NFTs and basically call every single URI. So let's actually do that right now. So we're going to say const data and then axios.get URI, and then you're going to go ahead and return data. Now, this hasn't done anything yet, like we haven't really even called it, but we also need to set the use state. So go ahead and say set NFTs and NFT URIs right there. And so we obviously want to make sure that every single time we open this application and whenever things change around, so like is loading rentable NFT URIs, it's changing, we want to fire it off again. And whenever the is loading owner is changing,
we also want to fire it off again. So that means that in the main part of this use effect, you want to put the update NFTs in there. And then now you can just go ahead and also console log this. Now, down there, scroll down to line 101 or wherever this error is going to show up. But just go ahead and comment this out. We don't need that. That was more for the dummy data. Don't worry about it for now. And there you go. Now you can see those are the 2 BMWs that we just minted. And if you go ahead and grab another and mint that as well, that should, oh, it actually failed. Okay, let's try it again. Oh, it was wrong Metamask. So if you, like, as you remember, only the contract owner can mint NFTs. So you want to select the correct Metamask. And so go ahead now, confirm it, and it should be there in a little bit. So wait for it. And it says minting is successful. And if you refresh, there it is. That is your new car that you just minted. So that said, let's go ahead and render the owner of every single NFT. All right, now, so if you check on the right-hand side, none of the NFT owners are being displayed right now. However, we already set up everything that we're gonna need to call that function, and we already have access to all the data. So now I'm gonna scroll down and find that piece where, find that part of the code where we are rendering out owner. And instead of having NFT.owner there, which was good when we had the pre-custom code or like the hard-coded data in there, just change that out to owner because we already have access to it, as I said. And there it is. There are your wallet addresses. So now you should be seeing all of it. Okay, so what we're going to be doing now is we will have to update the user data. If you actually check it, it's next to the rentee. There's like all this static jargon that we put there. So that's what we're going to update now. So we're going to need to create a brand new function for that, and don't forget that it's going to be an async function because we're going to be fetching a bunch of things. We already have the NFTs. So now we're going to go ahead and loop through all of them. For every single NFT that we have, what we're going to say is the user const user of equals await contract.call user of. We're just going to go like that. And then we're going to have to pass in index +1. On the Solidity side, we are starting to, the relevant data starts to count from 1. And on the JavaScript side, the relevant counting starts at 0. So when you interact between the two, the JavaScript numbers need to be increased by 1. So that's what we have. That's why we're passing an index +1. Also, don't forget it that this is an async function. Otherwise, everything is going to freak out. And then you want to pass in that new user data. So basically the way you're passing in, I'm not sure if you've seen this before. It's a pretty advanced way to update an array.
I found this on the web.
Siri is going hard. So this is a pretty advanced way to update an array inside of a use state. So basically what you're doing is you're catching the previous state of that use state. You're spreading it out, basically like mapping it through, and then just pushing the last element after it. So it's like push, but for use states that are arrays, if that makes sense. And it's like super neat way to do this. All right. Now, once that is done, you obviously want to call that function. And we want to call this function every single time the NFTs are changing. So create a use effect for that. Put the NFTs state in the dependency array, and then just pass in the function, call it right there. All right, so as you can see, all the cards, like we commented out the rent button. So we're going to make sure we have that because that's going to fire off the function that later on that will enable the user to rent the actual car. So comment that back in, I guess now. And so because it's still like built for the static way of things that we had it in the CLI starter files, just remove NFTs from there. Don't have to worry about it. And there you go. Now your buttons are back. So that's checked. And so now you want to update the rentees. All right. So that still has that static data that we hard coded in there. So we're going to update those. It's the same address, but so let's actually make it dynamic now. And so what you want to put there is the user of data index. So it's going to fetch
the current user of every single car that you have one by one and match the corresponding address of that NFT's user, and then also shorten it. So hope that made sense. And so there you go. Whenever you see that lots of zeros, that means that car is available for rent. I want to emphasize that because that caused a little bit of a confusion even between us when we were building it in the background. Like, some of us didn't really understand the concept. So I just want to reiterate that whenever you see a bunch of zeros, that means that it is an invalid address, but this is perfect to put there and indicate that this car is available for rent, right? And so with that said, this part is pretty much good to go. And so we're now going to go ahead and update the price. Okay, so as you can see on the right hand side next to the price, some weird stuff going on. Once again, static data. Let's make it dynamic. So we're going to need to make that static data dynamic. All right, so for that, we're going to read data. So go there and we're going to use the get amount per minute function of the contract we built. Let's go ahead and start connecting it to the front end. It's going to be a new function, which is going to be update price. It's going to be an async function as usual. And just like last time, do a try catch because it's the blockchain and we're early and it's just good practice. You also want to map through or like loop through all the NFTs. Basically what you do is we're going to fetch the amount per minute property for each NFT. Now we're literally just calling it the same way we did it. We can just get faster this time. And so we're going to once again format it because in the contract, everything is in way. So we're going to use ethers.js for that to format it to ether. And that way it's going to be like way easier for us as in humans to understand what the price is. And let's just update the price just how we did it last time, and it's going to be an array of prices, so we're going to have to watch out for that. Now you also want to have the NFT prices updated whenever any kind of change is happening around pricing around the NFTs. And so now let's actually go ahead and display all that. So there is our static data. Let's just put it there. So now that actually should display it, but there is some crazy thing going on there. So if we go back to where we fetch the new price, oh yeah, if we use index instead of index, it's not going to work. I don't know what we expected, but there it is. And you also got to import ethers.js because without that, we're not going to be able to convert. And there it is. Well, kinda, it's there. It's the array. We gotta get one item of it. So once again, get the corresponding item, and there, now it's working. It's perfect. And let's actually rent these cars. All right, so we are at the final stretch, the very end of this build, the one and the only rent function that separates us from being completely done. So go into your rent forms.js file. Let's finish this out strong. And let's actually get started by importing all the useful stuff from Thirdweb. So use contract and use contract call. We're going to need both of them. And at the very top of just how we used to do it. So at the top, initiate the contract instance and put in your contract address. So use contract, and then paste it in. Nice. So that should be familiar already. And so there is the formake function, create an unsubmit property or like event, and create an async function that will have values and reset form as their input parameters, and then usual try catch, error out all the or the console log the errors. And then we're going to go ahead and fetch the due amount. So the due amount, actually we won't fetch it from the contract, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create an integer out of the expires value that we are putting in to the form itself. And we're going to go ahead and multiply it by the ether or the ether amount that it would cost us to, and multiply it by the per minute ether amount. So that's going to be our due amount, and that's the amount that we're going to be sending to the contract. So go ahead, create another promise, and then this time we're going to call it data, and it's going to be contract.call, and we're going to call the rent. And so we're going to need to pass in a few things. We're going to need to pass in the values.token ID, and we're going to need to pass in the values.expires. So that way, the contract that we created previously, it all has that. If you don't believe me, go ahead, check it, and you will see what I'm talking about. That's basically it. And now you also want to pass in a value, and that's going to be the amount that the contract is going to charge you. And so it's going to charge the user. So you wanna specify it very correctly, because the contract will reject it if it's not enough ether. So you want to say ethers.utils.parseEther, and you will need to pass in the due amount that we just calculated. And you also want to turn it into a string before you do any of that stuff. And now we are going to handle this entire thing with Toast. And so just put in your pending, success, and error messages, just like all the time. It's like a little too repetitive at this point, but that's fine. Now, before we do anything else, just want to make sure that the onSubmit and onReset events of the form are hooked up to Formic, and everything is going to be handled correctly. So let's go ahead and test this thing out. So I'm going to put in 1, as in for car ID, and I'm going to put in 3 minutes. So let's see. Okay, there's some sort of error. And so let's go ahead and hit renting is in progress. Metamask pops up. Nice. There's your correct price, by the way. I don't know if you caught it. I'm going to rewind it a little bit. There's your correct pricing. And there's your gas fees. And now if you hit confirm, it'll take a little bit extra to load, but that's fine. It's pending. Let's go ahead and speed it up. We don't have time. Speed it up. And there it is. Now it's successful. So that NFT is currently rented successfully. And if you refresh, the rent button now turned into unavailable. And you can do this with all the other ones. Test it out. And also if you see the rent key actually changed to the wallet address that I have copied. If I go ahead and switch to the other account and then scroll down a little bit, you can see that all the other ones are still with the basic data. So with that being said, that is your Turo build. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a ton of value out of it. And if you did, make sure to go ahead, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, because we're going to drop a few more of these. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.